Hey everyone, in this assignment, you're going to work on centralized government. That's one of the big key elements of a civilization. And there are two options for this mini project, and I'll explain a little bit of both of them and how grade this project. So the big question here is, why did the first cities need organized governments? We've been talking about cities and city-states in ancient Mesopotamia. We talked about city-states around Sumer. We'll use your government notes and do one of these two options. Option one is to write a speech to persuade the farmers of the Fertile Crescent to work together to control the Tigris and Euphrates River. So imagine that you lived back then and you needed to convince those farmers that we need to control the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. You explain why the rivers need to be controlled, how do you propose or how do you plan to control them, and how do you propose to coordinate this large-scale activity. So those are some of the things you would include in your speech. Now, to be very clear, you don't actually have to give this speech to anybody. You just have to write it as if you were going to try to persuade the farmers of the Fertile Crescent. The second option would be to write an acrostic poem using the word centralized government. So an acrostic poem is writing these two words going down the side of the page. I have an example here. So I would have centralized government, and then for every letter I would have a phrase that talks about governments in ancient Mesopotamia. So it would be the notes that I have that I took on the governments. We read some pages together from My World History, from some sources on Epic. I have books in the classroom. So you'll use that information to put together this acrostic poem. Either way, if you choose option one or option two, your goal is to include lots of information about why the first cities needed organized governments. The scoring guide, since there's two different projects, I'm going to use this as the scoring guide for most of the mini projects that we're doing in social studies from now to the end of the year. You'll tell me about your topic that's worth the most points. So you have lots of facts, good information, accurate information. You're not just trying to make stuff up. You're showing what you've learned in the presentation of your project. So if you're writing a speech, it's not just some fancy speech where maybe it's really well written, but it doesn't have many facts and information, that sort of thing. For these two options, the second piece of the scoring guide, you should have no problem. But you're going to see this come up in other scoring guides as well. If you're giving extra details about your topic, going above and beyond in your project, maybe you include some creativity in your work. That's in this piece. And since these are both writing, I do expect proper 6th grade writing. You're using correct spelling, capitalization, punctuation. I would suggest writing this on Google Docs. You've got a spell check that you can use. And altogether, it'll be 50 points. This is going to be a summative assignment because we're going to work on it for multiple class periods. And it will be part of quarter 3 grades.